particular the fact that the things that are being fought for in Ashraf, in Iran, in Libya, in Tunis, in Egypt, these are not, as our leaders so often tell us in the Western countries, Western values. They're not Western values. They are indeed universal values. Otherwise, how could they not lie at the heart of the UN Charter? And by the way, they are values which are as true a part of Islam, the real Islam, as I think they are a part of Christianity, and it's something we should recognize. Mr. President, if you'll forgive me a personal recollection, between 1974 and 1976, I was a first secretary in the British mission in Geneva, in what was then the Route de Vermont. And during my time there, one of the tasks that I was set, which changed my life, frankly, was the task to bring before the Human Rights Commission Sheila Cassidy, who had been tortured in the regime of Pinochet. I say it changed my life because it helped to form my political opinions as a liberal, at the heart of which lie this concept of the importance, the absolute importance, of a system of belief in politics which depends on the primacy of individual human rights. So, I need hardly say that it gives me great pleasure to be here in this room. I don't know if it was this room that I actually gave evidence in, but it was close to here. My memory isn't that clear that far back. There was a very great British philosopher. We in Britain have had not many, I have to say, great philosophers, but one of the greatest of them was Edmund Burke, who said that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is the silence of good men. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men should remain silent. And I'm here today, as I suspect many of you are, to challenge the silence of those who ought not to be silent in what is a clear, flagrant, and demonstrable breach, not only of the proper government's actions of governments that are concerned, but also of the individual human rights of the 3,400 or so men, women in Ashraf camp. We've heard today very clearly about the legal case. I'm not a lawyer. I can, however, say this, that as I understand it, the Fourth Convention, which of course protects the rights of refugees in times of conflict, in times of war, does not end when the war ends. Those refugees who have been put in difficulty or under threat in times of war, that position of protection is not removed from them when the war ends, it's removed from them when their position is put right. And that certainly is the basis upon which I believe the refugees in, for instance, the Balkans have been treated. Their Fourth Convention protections did not end when the Balkan conflict was put to an end. They ended when their position was properly rectified. Now, surely, if that applies to those refugees, it must apply also to Ashraf. But this is not dependent, this does not rest simply on a legal position. There has been, as Andras has said, a clear individual undertaking given by the United States government to each and every single one of those people. That is a commitment of honor. And it is, I think, the honor of the United States who signed that, which is now placed in question, if that is not adequately delivered. I wonder whether you can hand over a legal commitment, if such a thing exists, to another sovereign government, as the United States claims it has to the Iraqi government. But if you can hand over a legal commitment, you cannot hand over a moral one. It is the United States still that remains the signatories, and Britain too. It is no good for us to say that this is now the responsibility of another sovereign government. We created the space in which the Iraqi government would come into existence. You cannot hand over that moral commitment in this fashion. It is now our duty to make sure that the promises that we gave are now honoured and in full, and if the proper vehicle for delivering those is the Iraqi government, that we must make sure that the Iraqi government does precisely that. So I believe that there is what you might call a presumed legal status, but there is an unquestioned moral obligation in this matter. By the way, their status under the Fourth Convention is not contingent on them not having political views. Let me remind you, a committee of closure in the office of the Prime Minister of Iraq, a committee of closure which might have after it a committee of closure by any means, and they are determined to shut down, even if it means denying the rights of those who exist in Ashraf camp, that camp for political reasons. This goes to the very top of the Iraqi government, it goes to the Prime Minister himself. And any action that takes place at Ashraf must be presumed to be his personal responsibility, which cannot be ducked or dodged. Second is, as we know, the Iraqi security forces have been very active. People have been killed, as well as maimed and injured, and others have been denied their rights to medical treatment. And indeed, not only have there been a denial of rights, there is, as we know, this now 24-hour non-stop campaign through loudspeakers, 210 loudspeakers. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a generally known fact, but this business of white noise I was just discussing with Juan Gares, it is rightly called a mental torture. I cannot imagine what it must be like with 210 loudspeakers at maximum volume, day after night after day after night without stop. And to live under those circumstances must indeed be a terrible thing. And then we know as well that there have been most unjust executions even this year in Iran for the simple act of being a relative of somebody in Ashraf camp. For the simple act of going to visit your relative, people have been executed, even in January and February of 2011. The duty of protection should be exercised, but I will not be happy until there is a permanent UN presence in Ashraf camp. And only then will I feel a little bit less concerned than I feel now. All that is necessary for evil to triumph is that good men should stay silent. So I agree with Mr. Ziegler. Why is it that the Human Rights Commission has remained silent? Why is it that the Swiss government has remained silent? Why is it that Baroness Ashton, by the way a very good friend of mine, has remained silent? We have to ensure that people speak on this, for it is in a very dangerous situation with few enough protections, the least protection that we can call. It is important that it happens, and it's important this happens soon. Thank you, Mr. President.